6 months after she left, the Marquess saw her pregnant and realized she never lost his baby. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The rain had not yet begun, but the sky over London looked as though it could change its mind at any moment. The carriage wheels clattered over the stones, a familiar rhythm that should have soothed William Ashford. Instead, each turn of the wheels only tightened something inside him. Home, he thought. At last. He leaned forward and glanced through the misted glass as Ashford Hall came into view. Lamps glowed near the entrance. The stone lions by the steps watched as they had watched his father, his grandfather, every returning heir before him. For the first time in weeks, William felt that odd quickening in his chest that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with one young woman waiting inside. Charlotte. He imagined her on the stairs, hands clasped, trying to appear composed even as she shifted from foot to foot. She always tried to look perfectly calm when he arrived, as if she had not run to the window 10 times in an hour. He had once caught her reflection in the glass, the first weeks of their marriage, her mouth forming his name before she schooled her face and turned with that shy little smile. He stepped from the carriage. The footman bowed. The air smelled of coal smoke and damp stone. It did not matter. He was about to see her. The butler opened the door. There was warmth inside and the faint murmur of voices somewhere down the corridor. "Welcome home, my lord," the butler said. "Thank you, Hargreaves," William replied, handing over his gloves and hat. "Is her ladyship—" A voice cut across the hall from behind him. "Ashford, back from conquering the north, are you?" It was Lord Beresford, shrugging into his coat as one of the footmen helped him. "We had nearly given you up for a man of industry alone." William turned, forced a polite smile. "Beresford, I did not know you were in town." "Passing through," Beresford said. His eyes gleamed with something like curiosity. "News travels faster than trains, you know, especially about young marriages." William frowned. "What news?" Beresford hesitated, as if he had spoken too quickly. "Oh, nothing of consequence. Only that London mouths have been terribly busy while you were away." Hargreaves shifted, his expression tightening almost imperceptibly. "What do you mean?" William asked. His tone sharpened. Beresford glanced at the butler, then back at William. "You have only just arrived. Forgive me. It is not my place to repeat every foolish whisper. Ask your steward. Or better yet, speak with your lady. She is, I presume, upstairs." Something cold ran down William's back. "Say it plainly." Beresford's smile faltered. "Very well, if you insist. There has been talk idle, no doubt, of Lady Ashford's fondness for the town, for certain visits, for a particular establishment on High Street. Some say she has developed an interest in a young merchant there, a most attentive fellow. But as I said, mouths are idle." The words were absurd. They sounded like some grotesque joke. William's first impulse was to dismiss them outright. "Charlotte? A merchant? Impossible." "This is ridiculous," he said, clipped. "You ought never to have repeated it." "I told you I should have held my tongue," Beresford said quickly. "Only others have not. Harrison, for one, has expressed great concern for you. He spoke of it at the club with such sorrow in his voice that I almost believed he had lost his own wife. I am sure there is nothing in it, Ashford. You will laugh about it tomorrow." The name struck him. Harrison. Concern. Sorrow. The Earl was too clever to speak without purpose. William turned to Hargreaves. "Is Lady Ashford at home?" "Yes, my lord," Hargreaves replied, a shade too carefully. "Her ladyship is in the morning room. She expected you later in the evening." "I see." William nodded once. "Lord Beresford, I must excuse myself." Of course," Beresford said, stepping aside. "Do give my respects to your lady." William did not answer. He walked down the corridor, each step echoing against stone and wood. The hall seemed longer than before. Words crowded his mind, ridiculous and ugly. Fondness for the town, a young merchant, Harrison's sorrow. "This is nonsense," he told himself. "Charlotte is not capable of—" He reached the door of the morning room and paused. His hand hovered over the handle for a brief second, long enough for him to hear his own heart. Then he opened it. Charlotte stood by the window, back half-turned, a book in her hands. At the sound of the door, she looked up, her eyes lit in that unguarded way he remembered so well. "William," she breathed. "You are early." He should have gone to her. That was what she expected. He could see it in the slight forward movement of her body. She took one step in his direction, then stopped as his expression reached her. Her smile faltered. "Is something the matter?" He closed the door behind him with deliberate care. "We shall see." She searched his face. "Did your journey go poorly?" "The journey went as expected," he replied. "I am more interested in what has occurred here in my absence." A faint line appeared between her brows. "Here?" "At Ashford Hall," he said. "In London, in our house, when I was away. Very little has occurred here," she said slowly. "The days have been quiet." She moved closer, tentative. "I have missed you." He held himself still. "Have you?" Something wary flashed in her eyes. "Yes, of course I have." "And how many times?" he asked. "Did you call at the town during those quiet days?" Colour rose to her cheeks. "I do not understand." "The town," he repeated. "High Street, the shops. A particular shop, perhaps, with a particular proprietor?" He watched her face carefully. "A young man, a merchant." For a heartbeat she simply stared. Then comprehension dawned. Her expression changed from confusion to stunned hurt. "Oh," she whispered. "Those stories reached you already." "So there are stories," he said. "There are always stories," she answered, her voice steadying. "They grow like weeds when someone has nothing better to do than tear at another's life." "That is not an answer." Her chin lifted a fraction. "Very well. Yes, I have been to town. Yes, I visited a shop. A merchant's shop. More than once, in fact." The admission struck him with the weight of corroboration, no matter how much he had sworn to himself that he would be rational. "Why?" he asked. "To purchase items," she said. "It is what one does in shops." He took a step forward. "Do not play with words, Charlotte. I want the truth." "The truth," she replied, heat entering her tone, "is that I have done nothing to be ashamed of." He exhaled slowly. "Lord Beresford informed me, most reluctantly, that there has been talk, that my wife has been seen in the company of a certain young merchant, that she pays him visits, that she lingers there, that Earl Harrison, in his great kindness, has repeated these things with deep concern for my honour." The mere mention of Harrison's name made her eyes flash. "Harrison, you know him to be my associate," William said. "I know him to watch me in drawing rooms as if I were a horse in a sale," she retorted. "I know he pays court to every whisper that might harm you, and then wears sorrow when he repeats it." He paused. "So you are aware of the rumours?" "I am aware that some people do not approve of the Marchioness speaking to those who are not dressed in silk," she replied. "Charlotte." "Yes, I have visited Mr. Thomas's shop," she said, each word distinct. "He sells fabrics and other goods. His sister runs a small charity school in the poorer district. She wrote to me asking for help with blankets and simple items. I asked him to put aside what she needed until I could send for them. That is all." "How often?" 3 or 4 times, perhaps," she said. "I lost count. I did not imagine I must keep an exact tally for you." "Did you go alone?" "With a maid," she answered. "Of course." "Which maid?" "Jane, most frequently." "Once with Mary." "And you spoke with this merchant?" he insisted. "At length?" "Yes," she said. "At length. About the quality of wool, about the price of linen, about the fact that his sister's pupils had holes in their socks." Her voice sharpened. "Tell me, William, at what point in that conversation did I become a scandal?" He felt the ground shifting beneath his certainties. Yet the image had already taken hold. His wife in a shop, a young man bending toward her with eager attention, servants watching, tongues wagging. "You might have asked me," she said more quietly, seeing his doubt in his eyes, "before you believed them." "I have not said I believed them," he answered. "You came in with accusation on your face," she replied. "You have not touched my hand since." His gaze flicked, unbidden, to her hands. They were steady, fingers lightly gripping the back of a chair. "I cannot ignore reports from half of London," he said. "Half of London?" she repeated, a mirthless little laugh escaping. "I did not know I had become so fascinating. This is not amusing." "No," she said. "It is not." Silence stretched for a moment, thin and fragile. She broke it. "William, I have something to tell you. Something I had hoped to say before any of this reached you." She swallowed once, nerves fluttering around her words. "I thought to greet you with joy. Instead, I find myself defending my name." "What is it?" he asked. She moved away from the chair, one hand brushing briefly, almost unconsciously, across her middle. It was such a small gesture that in another mood he might not have noticed. Now, every detail struck him. "I am with child," she said softly. The world narrowed. He stared at her. "What did you say?" "I am with child," she repeated, a flush rising in her cheeks. "I saw the physician last week. He believes I am a little over a month along." A month? He counted backwards automatically. 1 month, a little more perhaps. His departure had been... He thought of the date, the day he had left, the week before it. There had been nights then, yes, but the numbers ran close, uncomfortably close, to the margin. He tried to dismiss it, tried to remember her exact words. A little over a month, a little, over. His mind, still tainted by all he had heard in clubs and corridors, seized upon the distance. "You are certain?" he asked. She blinked. "The physician is certain. I have been feeling unwell in the mornings, tired. It explains a great deal. And you did not think to write to me?" The question came out harsher than he intended. "I wish to tell you myself," she said quickly. "I wanted to see your face when I spoke. I thought you would be pleased." He was silent. "Are you not?" she whispered. He heard the question, heard the trembling hope in it, but the crowd in his mind shouted louder. Harrison's delicate concern, Beresford's reluctant gossip, the image of his wife walking into town, visiting a young man's shop again and again, a child conceived, perhaps, by another. He spoke slowly, each word heavy. "You say the physician believes you to be a little over a month along." "Yes." "And you began to feel ill when?" "A fortnight ago," she said, "perhaps a little more. And our last—" He stopped, unwilling to put the rest into words. "The last time I shared your room was the week before my departure." "Yes," she said, color deepening. "Do you truly need to have it laid out like a ledger?" He did not answer that. "William," she moved closer, lowering her voice as if gentleness might pull him toward her. "This is our child." The word struck him. Our. It should have filled him with gratitude, with sudden warmth. Instead, he heard only uncertainty. He took a step back. "Is it?" he said. She froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he replied, struggling to keep his tone level, "that the timing is curious. You visit a young man repeatedly in my absence. I am told you linger there. I return to find that you are with child and can give me only vague accounts of months and days, and I am expected to feel nothing but joy. You cannot think—" Her voice broke. "You cannot possibly mean to suggest that—" "I do not know what to think," he interrupted. "That is the difficulty." She stared at him, eyes wide, as if she had misheard. "We have been married barely a year. I have given you no cause to doubt me, none. I have never looked at another man with anything but courtesy. You know this." "I know what I see," he said. "I know what I hear." "You hear gossip," she said. "Poison poured into your ears by a man who profits when you fall. You see me doing what you have always claimed to admire, helping those who have less than we do. And now you stand before me as if you barely know me. Then explain why the entire city has formed an opinion of your conduct, while I am left ignorant," he said sharply. "Explain why I hear of your errands from men at the club, rather than from your own lips." "Because I did not think it worth troubling you with the details of every blanket I purchased," she said. "Forgive me for believing you had greater concerns than whether I went to town on Tuesday or Wednesday." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration snapping at his composure. "This is not about blankets, this is about appearances. A marchioness does not repeatedly pay calls on a tradesman without remark." "He is not a suitor," she cried. "He is not—" "Can you swear," he cut in, "that there has been nothing between you that would give anyone the right to question your virtue?" Her mouth fell open. "You dare to ask me that?" "Yes," he said. "I do." She drew herself up, shoulders squared, though her hands trembled. "Very well, then. I swear before God there has been nothing improper between Mr. Thomas and myself. I swear that I have been faithful to you in thought and deed. I swear that this child is yours." He met her gaze. There was no flinch in it, no shift, only wounded outrage and a thin layer of fear. "You have always been a poor liar," he said after a beat. "If you are lying now, you have learned very quickly." Her breath hitched. "You still do not believe me." "I have been away for a month," he replied. You tell me you are with child for a little over that time. The rumor of your friendship with this man is on everyone's tongue. My business rival, who has every reason to wish me weak, comes to me with concern for my household. Forgive me if I require more than your indignation as proof. Color drained from her face, then flooded back with painful force. More than my word, she repeated. My word which you once called your surest comfort. People change, he said, the words falling sharper than he intended. Yes, she whispered. They do. She turned away from him, one hand flying to her mouth as if to hold back a cry. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Finally, she spoke without turning. What would you have me do then? Deny the child? Pretend there is nothing within me? Send word to this miraculous Mr. Thomas that his supposed conquest requires his protection? Do not mock me, he said. Mock you? She spun back, eyes bright with unshed tears. You accuse me of adultery and call it prudence. You doubt your own child and call it caution. You listen to men who love the taste of scandal and call it wisdom. Tell me, William, at which point may I begin to feel mockery is justified? Lower your voice, he said. The servants will hear. Let them, she replied. It seems they hear everything else. He stepped closer despite himself. You would drag our private matters through the house as well? Our private matters have already been dragged through every drawing room in London, she said, her voice shaking. Not by me. He closed his eyes briefly, fighting the urge to shout, to shake sense into the air around them. This was not how his homecoming was meant to unfold. He had imagined many things on the journey back. Her happiness, her nervousness, her surprise at some small gift he had purchased. He had not imagined this. His wife standing before him, tears in her eyes, swollen with his child, or another's. His child, he thought stubbornly. It must be. But the poison of suspicion was not so easily purged once swallowed. If you had told me at once, he said more quietly. If you had written, I wanted to look into your face when I spoke, she replied. I wanted to see your joy. I wanted to share in it, not send it folded in a letter like an account. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The room felt smaller, crowded with all the words they had not said in a year of marriage. What do you intend to do? She asked finally. Do? With me. With us. Her hand hovered near her waist, but she did not touch it this time. Will you send me away? Will you keep me here under some cold, watchful truce until the child is born, and you can count the days on your fingers like coins, with you acting as you have, he said slowly. I am not certain what is best. Acting as I have, she repeated dully. You speak as if I have run screaming through the streets. You have placed us both in a position of ridicule, he replied. If I shield you blindly and the rumors prove true, I become the fool who defended what all the world saw plainly. If I cast you off and you are innocent, I become the monster who condemned his wife without cause. There is no path without danger. She stared at him, then gave a small broken laugh. How fortunate for you that you can see the matter as an exercise in strategy. That is not what I am carrying your child, she interrupted, her voice suddenly very soft. I have been sick, frightened, alone in this house, listening to whispers grow like ivy on the walls. I waited for you day after long day, and told myself that when you came home, everything would be right again, that you would take my hand and I would tell you, and the worry would go away because you would be here. And now you stand in front of me and speak of danger to your reputation. He flinched. It is not only my reputation, he said, but the words sounded thin. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, angry at the tears. Do you love me, William? Or did you simply enjoy loving the idea of a young and obedient marchioness who would never trouble your peace with anything more than flower arrangements and quiet admiration? He did not answer at once. He had never been good with such questions, with feelings that demanded to be named. He had always believed that his care for her was obvious in the life he provided, the courtesy he showed. Love to him was as much in the signed documents that secured her future as in the rare tender words at night. That is not a fair question, he said at last. On the contrary, she whispered, it is the only question that matters to me. He looked away. I think perhaps we should not say more tonight. Of course, she said. We would not wish your sleep to be disturbed by an excess of truth. Charlotte. She raised a hand, stopping him. You have made yourself plain. You doubt me. You doubt our child. You require proof of what I know in my bones. Very well, I cannot argue you out of your own fear. It is not fear, he protested. Then it is worse, she replied. She moved toward the door, then hesitated. Her shoulders sagged for the first time since he had entered the room. I loved you, she said quietly. I married you, believing that whatever storms might come, we would face them together. I did not imagine that the first storm would be you. Before he could form an answer, she slipped past him and left the room. He stood there staring at the door after it had closed, her words echoing in the silence. He told himself he had only sought clarity, that any reasonable man in his position would have done the same. Yet the air felt heavy with something fouler than caution. Hours crept by. Dinner came and went, scarcely touched. He did not see her at table. Hargreaves murmured that her ladyship had a headache and had retired early. William nodded, though the explanation sat uneasily. Night deepened. He paced his study, the decanter on the sideboard untouched. From time to time he went to the window, looking out at the drive as if expecting something to arrive, though he could not have said what. At last he climbed the stairs. He hesitated outside her door, then lifted his hand to knock. His knuckles hovered for several seconds, but the words he needed refused to come. What would he say? That he believed her? That he did not? That he was sorry for the way his voice had hardened over shared fears? He let his hand fall. Tomorrow, he muttered to himself. We will speak tomorrow when tempers are cooler. He returned to his own room and lay down fully dressed on the bed. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, it was shallow, chased by restless dreams in which faceless men whispered in his ear, and Charlotte walked away from him, always just out of reach, the hem of her gown vanishing around corners. At some hour before dawn, he woke with a jolt, heart pounding. The house was quiet, the kind of deep stillness that comes only when everyone is asleep or gone. He rubbed his eyes, sat up, and listened. Nothing. A strange unease pushed him to his feet. He crossed the corridor to her room and knocked lightly. No answer. Charlotte, he called. Silence. He tried the handle. The door opened easily. The bed was made. Not simply unoccupied, but fully made. The sheets smooth, the coverlet pulled tight. Her dressing table, usually scattered with a few familiar objects, a brush, a ribbon, a small bottle of scent, was almost bare. The wardrobe doors stood open to reveal several empty spaces where gowns once hung. A chill spread through him. "Hargreaves!" he called, louder than he intended. The butler appeared in the doorway within moments, his face composed but pale. "Yes, my lord?" "Where is her ladyship?" William demanded. "Her room is—" He gestured helplessly. Hargreaves looked at the empty wardrobe, the bare dressing table, the perfectly made bed. His composure slipped for a second. "My lord, I had hoped you knew." "Knew what?" William's voice sharpened. "Her ladyship left at first light," Hargreaves said slowly. "She rose before the servants. Mrs. Porter found the side door unbolted an hour ago, and her ladyship's maid reported that her trunks were gone. There was a carriage summoned in the night, discreetly. We believed she had informed you." William stared at him, the words falling like stones. "No," he said, "she did not inform me." "There is this, my lord," Hargreaves added, producing a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. "It was on your study desk, with your name upon it. Mrs. Porter thought it best to bring it to you at once." William snatched the paper, his fingers clumsy. His name, written in Charlotte's hand, looked oddly distant. He broke the seal and unfolded the page. The letter was brief. She wrote that the events of the previous evening had shaken her more than she wished to admit, that in the hours after their quarrel, she had been seized by a violent agitation of the body and heart. She described pain, fear, and the terrible certainty that the small life within her had been lost. She wrote that she had bled and wept, and understood that nothing remained but sorrow. She told him she could not stay in a house where her word was worth less than a stranger's whisper. She released him from any duty toward her. She spoke of the child in past tense, as a little soul gone before it had a chance to draw breath. She wrote that it was better for him to think the baby dead than to spend his life doubting a living child. She asked only that he would, in time, forgive her for bringing him such grief. The last line wavered where the ink had blurred. "I loved you," she had written, "but I cannot remain where love is not believed." The letter slipped slightly in his hand. "When did she leave?" he asked, his voice low. Just before dawn, my lord, Hargreaves replied. The coachman said she took the road north, but he did not know the final destination. She asked that he tell no one until an hour after she had gone. William stood in the doorway of her abandoned chamber, clutching the letter that spoke of a lost child and a vanished wife, and he realized he had no idea where she had gone. For a long moment, William did not move. The letter crumpled slightly under his tightening fingers. The room around him, the empty wardrobe, the smooth bed, the silent hearth, seemed to tilt as if the house itself had shifted under his feet. Hargreaves stood just inside the doorway, waiting, his hands folded but not quite steady. She says she lost the child, William said finally, the words rough. Yes, my lord, Hargreaves replied. So it appears. Did no one summon a physician? William demanded. No one heard her? No one saw anything? Her ladyship gave no alarm, Hargreaves said quietly. We heard her retire. Jane slept in the small chamber joining hers. She said her ladyship was restless, but refused company. By morning. He gestured helplessly toward the bare room. William pressed his fingers to his eyes for a second, then dropped his hand. Send for Jane. Yes, my lord. The maid came within minutes, her eyes red-rimmed, apron slightly askew as though she had dressed in haste. You were with Lady Ashford last night, William said, not bothering with preamble. Tell me precisely what you saw and heard. Jane twisted her hands together. Her ladyship was very pale when she retired, my lord. She asked me to help her with her gown, but she said I need not stay. I asked if she wished for tea or for me to fetch Mrs. Porter, but she said no. She was quiet. Only very still. Did you hear anything in the night? He pressed. Crying? Movement? Jane swallowed. I woke once, sir. I thought I heard something. Perhaps a sob, or perhaps I dreamed it. When I knocked, there was no answer, but I feared to disturb her if she had at last fallen asleep. This morning, when I went in, she was gone. Only the bed, made as you see. I swear I thought she had gone to you, my lord. I did not know. Her voice broke. William turned away, jaw tight. The picture formed without his consent. Charlotte suffering alone, believing she had lost the baby, deciding in the same night to leave him. He had sent no word after their quarrel. He had not opened her door. He had left her to face it all without him. Very well, he said stiffly. You may go. When they left him alone, he sat on the edge of the unused bed. He read the letter again, as if new words might appear between the lines. They did not. Only the same calm apology, the same stark mention of pain and loss and departure. A child, their child, if she had spoken true from the beginning. No proof now, nothing but a letter and an empty house. Hours passed in a blur. Messages were sent to nearby coaching inns, to the post station, to a few discreet contacts along the northern roads. None brought any sure answer. A lady, yes, one innkeeper said later, but she wore a veil and gave a false name. Another remembered trunks without a crest. No one could say where she had gone beyond northward. After 2 days of fruitless inquiries, William stood before the great map in his study and stared at the spreading lines of road. They yawned open, each one a possible path. Hargreaves came to the door. My lord? What is it now? William asked, not looking away from the map. There is a caller, Hargreaves said. Lord Harrison. The name sent a bitter taste through William's mouth. Show him in. Harrison entered with his usual easy grace, coat perfectly fitted, expression arranged in somber concern. Ashford, he said. I came as soon as I heard. I cannot tell you how distressed I am. William turned slowly to face him. You seem remarkably well for a distressed man. Harrison's brows drew together in what might have passed for hurt. This is no time for barbs. I was told your lady has gone. You were told correctly, William said. Though it is interesting to hear how quickly the news has travelled. You know how it is, Harrison said with a sigh. Any whiff of domestic trouble and society pounces. If I could silence their tongues, I would. For your sake, how very loyal of you. Harrison's eyes flicked around the room, noting the disorder, the open map, the letters scattered. Have you any notion where she might have gone? If I did, William said, I would not be standing here. I see. Harrison took a step closer. May I speak plainly? By all means, William replied. I warned you, Harrison said gently. Not in so many words, perhaps, But I tried. When I heard the talk about Lady Ashford in the town, I did my best to draw your attention to it. Not to wound you, but to prepare you. She is young. Marriage is confining to some spirits. I feared she might feel so. She did not feel confined, William said, pulse quickening. She felt accused. I never accused her, Harrison protested. I merely repeated what I heard. And from whom did you hear it? William asked sharply. Servants, tradesmen? From men who do not invent tales without cause, Harrison replied. Surely you do not think I go about bribing footmen to spy on your wife. William held his gaze. What I think is that you have taken an uncommon interest in my private affairs. Harrison spread his hands. You are my friend. Your success is my concern. When I saw you tying yourself to a girl with no experience and a dangerous taste for sentimental charity, I worried. If she is indeed gone now, perhaps it is harsh to say, but you might one day consider it a narrow escape. Enough, William said, the word quiet but loaded. You presume too much. Harrison's mouth tightened. I mean only that this situation need not ruin you. If she has chosen to remove herself, then you must let her. You can put the matter behind you, focus on business, allow time to dull the gossip. In a few years no one will remember the details, only that you bore it with dignity. With dignity, William repeated, the phrase like ash. Yes, Harrison said. Do not chase her. Do not publicly entangle yourself further. It will only feed the talk. Maintain silence. Let the scandal exhaust itself. It is the only wise course. William studied him. Harrison's tone was smooth, the counsel reasonable on its surface. Yet something in his words scraped at William's raw conscience. I thank you for your advice, William said slowly. I shall consider it. Harrison appeared satisfied. Good, that is all I ask. As for business, nothing need suffer. I will see that your interests remain protected while you recover. Yes, William said. I dare say you will. After Harrison left, the house felt colder. Days stretched into weeks. The inquiries William had set in motion returned with fewer and fewer possibilities. He received polite letters from country cousins, each opening with regret and closing with unasked questions. Invitations dwindled. When he did appear in society, conversations paused when he approached and resumed in a different key when he passed. Always, he sensed the same question beneath every polite phrase. What did he do to drive her away? Or worse, what did she do? At his club, familiar rooms turned treacherous. Men he had known for years lowered their voices as he walked by. Once, he caught two of them mid-sentence. Ran off with that shop fellow, they say. They broke off when they saw him, eyes wide with the sudden awareness of being overheard. Gentlemen, William said, stopping at their table, if you are determined to discuss my wife, you may do so in front of me. They fumbled compliments, protestations, assurances that they meant no harm. Of course, Ashford, one said. We only wondered. You need not wonder, William cut in. From this day, I will not hear another man speculate about Lady Ashford under my roof or in my hearing. Is that clear? They flushed, nodded, muttered apologies. The conversation turned to horses with a clumsy haste. Later, in a corner of the room, Beresford approached him again. You were severe, Beresford remarked. People are curious, you know. They will talk whether you forbid them or not. Then let them do it out of my sight, William replied. Beresford lowered his voice. Ashford, are you certain she is to blame? Women do foolish things when left too much alone. If there was some indiscretion, it need not destroy your life. Men look past such things. My life is not your concern, William said. Perhaps not, Beresford said. But it is the concern of your associates. Harrison has been very vocal in his sympathy. He told us you were bearing it bravely. Of course he had. And what do you think? William asked. Honestly? Beresford shifted. I thought she adored you. I thought you adored her. The rest is noise I cannot pass. Only be careful with Harrison. He has a way of turning other men's misfortunes to his profit. The remark sat with William long after he left the club. While his world contracted under the weight of rumour and regret, Charlotte's world shifted in another direction. The coach that carried her away from Ashford Hall jolted and rattled over the rutted road. but she barely felt the movement. Her hands lay clasped in her lap, holding a small leather reticule. Everything she possessed now that bore any personal meaning was in that bag. The rest, jewels, gowns, letters, wedding gifts, she had left behind. The older woman seated beside her in the coach watched her with worried eyes. Aunt Margaret had once been a frequent guest in her parents' house before their deaths. Now, a widow with modest means in Birmingham, she was the only relation Charlotte had felt she could turn to. "You are certain about this?" Aunt Margaret asked for the third time. "You might have gone to your uncle in Surrey. He would have written to my husband at once," Charlotte said softly, "and I could not bear that. Not yet." "You do not intend to remain hidden from him forever, child," Aunt Margaret said. Charlotte looked out of the murky coach window. "He has already made his choice. I am only accepting it. He is a man," Aunt Margaret said. "Men do not always think clearly where honor is concerned. They are raised to value their name as if it were a fragile vase. One crack, and they imagine it shattered beyond repair. Sometimes, if they are fortunate, they grow out of that nonsense." Charlotte managed a weak smile. "Do many succeed?" "A few," Aunt Margaret said, "usually after they have broken the hearts of those they did not deserve." Charlotte pressed a hand to her abdomen, feeling nothing yet, not truly, only a hollow ache, as if the child were more idea than reality. "I may not even be with child any longer," she murmured. "Last night I was so certain. The pain was so sharp." "We will see a doctor as soon as we reach Birmingham," Aunt Margaret said. "You must not torture yourself with guesses." Charlotte nodded. "If there is no child, I will have lost both in one night. And if there is," Aunt Margaret replied gently, "you will have a reason to stand." Birmingham greeted them not with grand avenues but with smoky roofs and busy streets. Aunt Margaret's house stood in a quieter lane, neat and modest, with a small knocker and narrow windows. "It is not Ashford Hall," Aunt Margaret said, leading her inside, "but it is clean and the walls do not listen for gossip." "It is more than enough," Charlotte said. She meant it. Within an hour, Aunt Margaret had a physician summoned. The man arrived with his bag and grave expression, greeted them with a bow and asked a series of brisk, impersonal questions. "Describe the pain," he said, "the time, the other signs." Charlotte answered as well as she could, her heart pounding. He examined her with careful hands, his face unreadable. At last he stepped back. "Well," Charlotte whispered, "is it—" "The child is still there," the doctor said. "From what I can tell, the pregnancy continues." Her eyes filled suddenly. "But the pain, the distress can do much harm," he said, "but not always the harm we fear. You must rest. You must avoid shocks. You must avoid upsetting news." Charlotte laughed softly at that. "I believe I have already had the worst news I can receive." "Then let us hope there are no more," he replied. "I will call again in a week." When he had gone, Aunt Margaret sat beside her on the small bed and took her hand. "You see," she said, "life clings when we least expect it." Charlotte wiped her cheeks. "He believes the child is a little more than a month along." "And what do you believe?" Aunt Margaret asked. "I believe," Charlotte said slowly, "that I have known it since before the physician said a word. I knew it when the room swam in Ashford Hall, and my hands shook and I could not bring myself to tell him for fear he would not. And then he did not." Her voice frayed. Aunt Margaret squeezed her fingers. "Child, listen. Whatever your husband has or has not done, this little one is yours. You will not face this alone. You have me. You have this house. You have your own strength, whether you feel it or not." Charlotte nodded, though her throat was tight. "What will people say when they see me like this? A woman alone, no husband, no explanation." "They will assume whatever suits their tastes," Aunt Margaret said. "Let them. You owe them nothing. You will be known here as my niece from the country, recently widowed. It is not the exact truth, but neither is it a cruelty. Those who matter will know you as I know you." "And how is that?" Charlotte asked, trying to steady herself with lightness. "As stubborn, impulsive, and entirely too ready to sacrifice yourself for others," Aunt Margaret replied, "but also kind and honest and undeserving of this nonsense." Charlotte gave a small, watery laugh. "You are very biased." "Indeed," Aunt Margaret said. "It is one of my best qualities." Life in Birmingham settled around them like a cloak. Days formed a pattern. Charlotte helped with small tasks, mending, ordering provisions, writing letters for Aunt Margaret's few clients who required neat hands. She kept out of sight when visitors came who might ask unwelcome questions. As her body changed, she learned to move differently. Stairs required more care. Chairs needed an extra cushion. Some mornings were worse than others. On those days, Aunt Margaret brought her tea and scolded her for trying to rise. In the streets, when she ventured out with her aunt, people looked and then looked away. Some nodded politely. Others allowed their gaze to linger a second too long on her rounded form. Once, as they passed a trio of women near the market, Charlotte heard a whisper behind a gloved hand. "Poor thing, no ring on her finger, men leave so easily." Aunt Margaret's back straightened. "Keep walking," she murmured. "I am not ashamed," Charlotte said, though her cheeks burned. "Nor should you be," Aunt Margaret replied. "If anyone should feel shame, it is not you." Yet at night, when the house was quiet and the aches of the day settled into bone and thought, Charlotte lay awake and traced the outline of her future in the dark. She imagined the child's face, though it shifted, sometimes bearing her features, sometimes what she remembered of Williams as a boy from the portrait in his mother's drawing room. She wondered what she would say when the child asked about its father. "He is alive," she whispered once, hand resting protectively over her stomach. "He is alive, and he is proud, and he is foolish, and he is yours. But you will never think yourself unwanted, even if he never sees you." Her words comforted no one but herself. Back in London, autumn crept over the city before William realized how much time had passed. The house remained too quiet. Rooms once warmed by Charlotte's hesitant attempts at arranging flowers or moving chairs stood untouched. He avoided the morning room entirely. Her gown, which he had insisted Hargreaves leave hanging in a wardrobe for fear of finality, remained exactly where she had left it. His business affairs, however, did not pause. Harrison was everywhere, offering help, smoothing edges, suggesting advantageous ventures to distract him. "You must not dwell on what you cannot change," Harrison said one day in William's study, as they examined a sheaf of papers. "Come, here is an investment you should consider. Birmingham. Expansion. The city is growing. There is money to be made in coal and steel and rail." "Birmingham," William repeated without thinking. "Yes," Harrison said, "I have contacts there, but I cannot oversee everything myself. You, however, have an eye for figures. You might visit, look into the factories, speak with the men. It would do you good to remove yourself from London for a time." "And if my absence fans the flames of gossip?" William asked dryly. "Let them talk themselves hoarse," Harrison replied. "Better they tire of repeating old stories while you secure your future. When you return with profitable contracts, no one will remember anything else." William picked up one of the documents. Numbers marched across the page. Production costs, estimated returns, yields over time. It was straightforward, almost soothing. Profit did not change its mind overnight. Coal did not vanish because a man had said the wrong words in his own house. "I will consider it," he said. Harrison smiled. "Good. I will arrange letters of introduction. You need not thank me." "I did not," William replied. Harrison laughed as if it were a jest. That night, in the quiet of his study, William looked not at the investment papers, but at Charlotte's letter again. The words had been folded and unfolded so many times the creases had worn thin. He thought of the physician she had mentioned. She had written of pain and loss with such certainty. Yet something gnawed at him. She had always been dramatic in her feelings, intense. Could she have mistaken some spasm of grief for the worst? Could she have bled from fear and yet still carried the child? It was foolish to hope. Dangerous. And yet, he set the letter down. His gaze fell upon the Birmingham documents. "Birmingham," he murmured again. The idea formed slowly at first, then more strongly. He could go there under the excuse of business. He could visit factories, sign contracts, shake hands. He could also walk the streets, ask discreet questions, look for a woman traveling under another name, a young lady lodged with an older relative. It was a fragile plan, more wish than strategy, but it was something. He rang for Hargreaves. "My lord?" The butler appeared. "Send word to Lord Harrison," William said. "Inform him that I will accept his suggestion. I will go to Birmingham to examine the proposed investments." "Yes, my lord." "And Hargreaves," William added, Have my trunk prepared. I shall leave within the week. Very good, my lord. The decision, once spoken, brought a strange mix of relief and dread. If she was not there, he told himself, then at least he would have seen for himself. He would not spend the rest of his life wondering if he had passed her by in some street he had never walked. When the day came, the sky over London again threatened rain. William stood on the platform as porters moved around him, calling destinations. "Birmingham!" a guard shouted. "Train for Birmingham now boarding." William stepped into the carriage, took his seat, and looked out at the city he was leaving behind. As the train pulled away, gathering speed, the houses thinned, fields opening in blurred stretches of green and brown. He sat very still, hands folded, eyes fixed on a point far beyond the window. He had told no one his true reason for going, not even himself, not entirely. Mile after mile fell away beneath the wheels. At that same hour in Birmingham, Aunt Margaret called up the stairs. "Charlotte, are you ready? The air will do you good. The doctor said gentle walks are recommended." "I am coming," Charlotte answered. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and picked up the little bonnet she could still tie beneath her chin. Her figure, now unmistakably that of a woman in her 7th month, moved carefully down the stairs. Outside, the street bustled with ordinary life. Vendors calling, children darting, carts creaking by. Charlotte drew a slow breath, feeling the child shift inside her, and stepped out into the flow of the city, unaware that somewhere along the same line of road, a train was carrying William Ashford steadily closer to her. The train slid into Birmingham, with a long hiss of steam and a jolt that snapped William out of his thoughts. "Birmingham, sir," the guard called, opening the carriage door. "End of the line." William gathered his coat and small case, stepped down to the platform and paused just long enough to feel the difference in the air. It smelled of coal and iron and work. The station buzzed with movement, voices layered upon voices. He resisted the urge to stand still and scan every passing face. Foolish, he told himself. She could be anywhere, or nowhere near this station at all. He made his way out, hired a cab, and gave the address of the lodging house Harrison's letter had recommended. "Business, sir?" the driver asked as the horse set off. "Yes," William said shortly. The answer was not entirely a lie. He spent his first days in Birmingham exactly as he had said he would, visiting factories, walking the echoing lengths of warehouses, speaking with managers and foremen. They talked of output and cost, of workers and wages, of coal supplies and rail connections. At night, in the quiet of his rented rooms, he spread papers across the small writing desk and stared at numbers. They blurred into images of Charlotte's face, of her hand lifting unconsciously to her waist. On the 3rd day, after a morning of negotiations, he left a foundry with soot on his coat and a dull pounding in his head. He sent his clerk back to the lodging with a stack of documents to be copied and declined an invitation to lunch from a local banker. "I prefer to walk," he said. "I need air." The banker looked at the grey sky and grimy street. "If you find any, you must tell us where you discovered it." William managed a thin smile and stepped away. He did not have a destination in mind. He moved along the street, letting the city carry him. Shops lined the road, their windows crowded with goods. Women in plain dresses hurried by with baskets. Children darted between carts. A newsboy shouted about some debate in Parliament. Then, as he turned a corner, he saw her. At first it was only the tilt of a head, the curve of a neck he knew better than he wished to admit. A woman in a simple gown stood near a baker's window, speaking to an older lady with a familiar stature. The younger woman's shawl was drawn close, but her profile was clear as she turned to laugh at something. His heart stuttered. "No," he thought. "It cannot be." She shifted slightly, taking a step back from the window. The shawl slipped just enough that he saw the full curve of her body. He stopped in the middle of the street. Her figure was unmistakable, the rounded fullness of advanced pregnancy, the way her hand rested lightly at the base of her back. Not the faint swell she had shown him in London, barely past the 1st month. This was the body of a woman 6-7 months along, carrying a life that had never been lost, Charlotte. He did not realize he had spoken her name aloud until a passer-by glanced at him. He moved without thinking, crossing the street. A cart rumbled by, forcing him to pause, but he kept his eyes on her. The older lady had turned away toward the greengrocer. Charlotte stood alone for a moment, adjusting the shawl again, unaware. "Charlotte," he said when he was close enough. She stiffened. The sound of her name in that voice in that city seemed to freeze her. Slowly, as if afraid the vision would vanish if she moved too quickly, she turned. Her eyes met his and widened. Color drained from her face, then returned in a rush. "William," she whispered. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The noise of the street faded around them, muffled by shock. He took in every detail, the new lines around her mouth, the slight roundness in her cheeks, the way her hands flew instinctively to her abdomen as if to shield it. "You are alive," he said, because it was the only coherent thought that reached his lips. "So are you," she replied, voice low. "I suppose that makes us both fortunate." His gaze dropped to her middle. "You told me you lost the child." She flinched. "This is not the place." "No," he said, hearing the strain in his own voice. "It is not, but I cannot pretend it is nothing. You are pregnant," she finished quietly. "Yes." He swallowed. "How long?" Her eyes sharpened. "You wish to count the weeks like a lawyer counts clauses." "Charlotte," he said, "please." She hesitated, then exhaled. "The doctor believes I am near my 7th month. 7 months. He did not need a calendar. His mind did the arithmetic in an instant. 7 months back from now put conception firmly in the period before his departure. Long before any whispered visits to merchants, long before any time away. The world tilted for him this time. "It was always mine," he said, barely more than a breath. "I told you it was," she replied. "You chose not to believe me." He closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them, she was still there, still real, still carrying the child he had mourned as dead. "May I speak with you somewhere less public?" he asked. "Your companion." "My aunt," she said. "Your aunt," he repeated. "Will she permit—" "She will object," Charlotte said, "but she will not forbid me. I am not a child, whatever you once believed." He almost said, "I never thought you a child." The words felt hollow in his throat. She glanced around, then nodded toward a side street. "There is a small park 2 streets over. Not grand, but quieter. Walk ahead, I will follow with Aunt Margaret and tell her I need a few minutes." "I will wait," he said. He moved as she directed, his legs curiously unsteady. The park was little more than a square of green with a few benches and thin trees, but it offered a shelter from the main street's bustle. He sat on one of the benches and stared at his hands. She arrived a few minutes later, walking slower now. Her aunt hovered behind her, eyes sharp as she took in William. "Lord Ashford," Aunt Margaret said, dipping a brief curtsy. "I had hoped never to make your acquaintance." "Then we are both disappointed," William replied. Charlotte gave her aunt a look. "Please, Aunt, only a little while." "I will be just there," Aunt Margaret said, pointing to another bench within clear sight. "If he upsets you, I will not hesitate to intervene." "Aunt," Charlotte murmured, but there was gratitude in her eyes. Aunt Margaret walked away, but remained close enough to watch. Charlotte lowered herself carefully onto the bench beside William, leaving a polite space between them. She adjusted her shawl again, then stilled her hands. He spoke first. "I received your letter. I believed what you wrote, that you had lost the baby." "So did I," she said. "That night, at least. I thought the pain meant the worst had happened." "And later?" he asked. "Later, when I reached Birmingham, the doctor said otherwise," she replied. "He examined me. He said the child was still there, alive. He warned me to rest to avoid distress." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "You see how well I have done with that." "And you chose not to write again," he said. "You chose to let me think the child was gone." "Yes," she said simply. "Why?" His voice cracked slightly. "Why would you do that?" She turned her head and looked at him fully. "Because you had already made clear what you thought of me. You doubted my word, my character, my fidelity, and the child I carried. If I told you the baby lived, you would spend the rest of its life looking at it with questions in your eyes. Every time you counted days or remembered some whispered rumor, you would wonder. I would not subject my child to that. Better you mourned a ghost than mistrusted a living, breathing person." "It was never a ghost," he protested softly. "It was my—" "Say it," she said. "Say the word." He swallowed. "Our child." She looked away. "I was wrong," he said. "Yes," she replied. "You were. I have no excuse," he added. "Only fear and pride and a foolish trust in men who did not deserve it. That is an excuse, she said. Not a good one, but an excuse. He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. When I saw you just now, I realized at once that I had done you an unspeakable wrong, that I let poison in and let it speak louder than your voice. I cannot undo that. But I can ask, will you allow me the chance to make amends? To support you at least? To be near when the child is born? She shook her head faintly. You cannot simply appear in Birmingham and decide to resume the parts of marriage that suit you. Life is not arranged so conveniently. I do not expect convenience, he said quickly. I expect difficulty. I expect you to distrust every word I say. I cannot blame you, but I will take any scrap of opportunity you give me. Why? She asked sharply. Because you have suddenly discovered that the scandal might not be quite so ugly if the child is truly yours? Because your name will not be as stained? He flinched. Because I never stopped. He broke off, choosing his words carefully. Because I cannot bear the thought that you will face all of this alone. Because I have come to understand that I valued my honor more than your heart, and that in doing so, I lost both. She was silent for a moment. You say these things now. Where were they when I stood in front of you in our house, terrified and hopeful, and told you I was carrying your child? In the wrong place, he said quietly. Buried under years of being told that a man's name is fragile, as your aunt says, that if he is made a fool he never recovers. I listened to that and not to you. I am ashamed of it. You should be, she said. They sat with that between them. He cleared his throat. Have you been well apart from the obvious? She finished. I have been as well as one can be when half the world believes one abandoned one's husband and the other half assumes one was cast out in disgrace. The house is small, but it is kind. My aunt has been generous beyond measure. The city is loud, but I have found a sort of rhythm. Do people know who you are? He asked. Here. She shook her head. To the neighbors, I am Mrs. Charlotte Mercer. A widow. It is simpler that way. Mercer, he repeated. A harmless name, she said. Do you object to it? I object, he said slowly, to a world in which you feel safer as a fictitious widow than as my wife. That world is the one we live in, she replied. We cannot wish it away. He looked at her rounded form again, the unmistakable evidence of life. May I ask, how has the pregnancy been? He ventured. Any illness? Has the doctor said? The doctor says the child is strong, she said. I am tired. My back aches. I scarcely sleep through the night. I am alternately ravenous and unable to look at food. In short, I am exactly as any woman in my condition might be. And you have faced all of it without me, he said. Yes, she answered. He reached out, then stopped himself, his hand hovering in the air between them. May I? She looked at his hand, then at his face. The struggle in her eyes was visible. At last, very slowly, she moved his hand to rest lightly against the side of her belly through the shawl. He had touched her like this before, but never with this awareness. Under his palm, there was a firm, unfamiliar curve. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then a faint movement, a shift as if the child had turned. His breath caught. Did you feel that? Yes, she said softly. He swallowed. Little one, I am your father. I do not deserve the title at present, but it is mine nonetheless. I have been a coward. I will try to be better. Her eyes closed briefly. He removed his hand, afraid to presume too much. Charlotte, he said, steadier now. I came to Birmingham for business, or so I told myself. Harrison suggested it. He has investments here, but the moment I saw the name of the city, I thought, perhaps I could find you. I did not truly believe I would, and yet here you are. That feels like more than chance. It feels like inconvenience, she said faintly. I had finally arranged my thoughts into something resembling peace. Do you wish me gone? He asked. If you say the word, I will leave you in peace. I will not trouble your door. I will send funds through your aunt to ensure your comfort and that of the child. I will claim the child legally so that it is not left without name or protection, but I will not force my presence on you. You speak as if generosity will wipe out the past, she replied. No, he said. I speak as if it might begin to pay a debt I can never fully settle. She looked at him for a long time. What do you intend to do about the rumors? About Harrison? About the fact that, as far as the world knows, your wife ran away and now lives here under another name, carrying a child conceived at a time they have already judged? I intend, he said, jaw tightening, to find out exactly who whispered what and when. I intend to uncover how those stories began. I intend to hold accountable anyone who profited from blackening your name. I have already begun to suspect that Harrison's concern was far from innocent. Suspect, she echoed. Only suspect? I have no proofs yet, he admitted. Only a pattern, his eagerness to bring me tales, his delight in advising silence, his insistence that I not seek you. And you trusted him more than me, she said, not accusing now, only stating. Yes, he said quietly. I did. I regret it more than I can say. You cannot undo what has been done to my reputation, she said. Even if you march into every drawing room in London and declare me a saint, they will remember the scandal longer than the correction. Perhaps, he said, but I can refuse to let the lie stand unchallenged. I can stand beside you instead of behind men like Harrison. You speak as if we stand together already, she replied. We do not yet. I know, he said. I will not pretend otherwise. Aunt Margaret approached then, her steps brisk. Charlotte, she called, you have been out long enough. You must not tire yourself. Charlotte rose slowly. We are finished, Aunt. That remains to be seen, Aunt Margaret said, glancing between them. Lord Ashford, I cannot pretend I am pleased to see you. But I will not deny that my niece has long carried a weight you placed upon her shoulders. If you truly wish to lighten it, you have much work ahead. I am aware, he said. Words are easy, Aunt Margaret said. Actions are more costly. I will be watching. I welcome it, William replied. Charlotte tightened her shawl. I must go. The doctor will scold if I overexert myself. May I call tomorrow? William asked quickly. At the house. To speak with you and your aunt more properly. She hesitated, glancing at Aunt Margaret. We will receive you, Aunt Margaret said. In the parlour. Briefly. Thank you, William said. Charlotte inclined her head. Until then. He watched them walk away down the path and back into the churning life of the street. Only when they disappeared from view did he release the breath he had been holding. He returned to his lodging in a daze. Papers lay where he had left them. Figures had not moved. Contracts still waited for signatures. Yet everything felt altered. He sent a note to the merchant Thomas, whose name he had pried from one of Harrison's earlier tales, and confirmed with a quiet inquiry. He requested a private meeting at the man's shop that afternoon. The reply came quickly. The merchant would be honoured. Thomas's shop stood on a busy street, bolts of cloth stacked neatly in the windows. Inside, the air smelled of dye and dust. Thomas himself was younger than William expected, perhaps not yet 30, with careful hands and wary eyes. My lord, he said, bowing stiffly as William entered. This is an honour. Spare courtesy, William said. I am not here as a patron, Mr. Thomas. I am here as a husband. Thomas paled. Lady Ashford. Yes, William said. You have seen her in London. You have spoken with her. And your name has been dragged through every club in the city as her supposed companion. I swear, my lord, Thomas stammered. I did nothing improper. She came to order items for a charity school, nothing more. She was always accompanied. I never— Be calm, William said, raising a hand. I do not accuse you. In fact, I suspect you are as much a victim of this as she is. I need to know exactly what transpired. Dates, visits, who saw what, and if anyone approached you, asked questions, offered money for information. Thomas blinked. Money? Did anyone, William repeated, offer you coin in exchange for gossip about Lady Ashford? Thomas hesitated. A gentleman came once, well dressed. Not like you, my lord, but fine enough. He asked about my patrons. Said he had heard that a certain marchioness favoured my shop. He wanted to know how often she came, what she purchased, whether she walked alone. He said he was concerned for a friend. I thought perhaps he was a relation. What did he look like? William asked. Tall, Thomas said slowly. Dark hair. A small scar near his temple. He had a way of speaking as if he already knew the answers and was only giving me a chance to confirm them. He offered to pay me for my time. I refused the money but answered his questions. I thought I was doing no harm. William's jaw clenched. Did he give a name? He did not, at first, Thomas said. Later, when he left, one of the apprentices asked who he was. He said only, "Tell your master that the Earl of Harrison is grateful for his honesty." The name settled like lead in the room. William exhaled through his nose. "You have been honest now, Mr. Thomas. I will see that no blame falls on you for the lies that followed." "I swear by all that is holy, my lord," Thomas said. "I never implied anything improper. If others twisted my words—" "I know who twisted them," William said, "and why." He left the shop with a clarity he had not possessed when he entered. Back at his lodging, he sent for his London steward and a trusted former footman who had left Ashford Hall's service the previous year. He had heard rumours that certain servants had been bribed for gossip. Now he needed names. The steward arrived the next day, dusty from travel, carrying notes and ledgers. The former footman James came with him, hat in hand, nervous. "You asked for those servants' accounts, my lord," the steward said, spreading papers on the table. There were unusual deposits made into the accounts of 2 maids and a footman around the time the gossip began, sums far beyond their wages. "Who made the deposits?" William asked. "The funds were routed through a solicitor in town," the steward said, "but I traced them back as far as I could. The origin appears to be a holding company, one we know is managed by Lord Harrison's man of business." James shifted. "Begging your pardon, my lord. I don't want trouble, but when I was still at the hall, there were whispers. Mr. Peters, the footman, bragged once that some fancy gentleman had slipped him extra coin for telling what he saw. Only what he saw wasn't much. A lady going to town, that's all. But the gentleman, he wanted it to sound like more. Said he could make a story out of scraps." "What gentleman?" William asked. "He never gave his name," James said. "But he came to the servants' door once. Tall, smooth talker. Looked like the kind who's used to getting answers. I saw him from the scullery. Mrs. Porter said it wasn't our concern, but the way Peters preened after made it seem wrong." "Thank you," William said, voice tight. "You have both been helpful." After they left, he sat very still. The pattern was no longer a pattern. It was a line drawn in ink. Harrison seeking gossip, paying servants, twisting visits to a shop into a tale of adultery, then delivering that tale with sorrowful eyes to a husband primed by pride to believe the worst. Toward evening, as he was considering his next move, a note arrived from Harrison himself. "My dear Ashford, I am in Birmingham for a few days to finalize certain arrangements. I am delighted to hear that your inquiries go well. Might we dine together this evening at my hotel? There is much to discuss. Yours, etc. Harrison." William stared at the neat handwriting for a long moment, then nodded to himself. "Very well," he murmured. "Let us discuss." The hotel dining room was well appointed, the sort of place where businessmen congratulated one another over heavy meals. Harrison rose from his table as William approached, smiling broadly. "Ashford," he said, "you look improved already. The Birmingham air agrees with you." "It has a certain sharpness," William said, taking his seat, clarifying. Harrison signaled for wine. "How go the factory visits? Have you found my recommendations sound?" "In some respects," William said. "In others, I have discovered unexpected details." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "For example," William continued, "in the course of my inquiries, I happened to visit a modest shop. The proprietor remembered a well-dressed gentleman who asked many questions about one of his patrons. A marchioness. My wife." Harrison's smile did not quite reach his eyes. "Curious. People do talk." "This gentleman," William said, "refused to give his name. Only when leaving did he mention quite distinctly that the Earl of Harrison was grateful for his honesty." Harrison's fingers tightened on the stem of his glass. "I see. Furthermore," William said, "financial records show that certain servants in my house received generous sums from a company connected to your affairs. Around the same time, rumors about my wife and this shopkeeper began to spread. You later came to me, full of concern, to repeat those rumors and advise that I do nothing, that I remain silent, that I let the scandal settle." "Ashford," Harrison said, attempting a laugh, "you are spinning a rather wild theory out of thin threads. You know as well as I that servants gossip for free. There is no need to pay them." "And yet you did," William said. "You paid for scraps and turned them into a story sharp enough to cut my marriage in two." Harrison's expression hardened. "Even if that was so, which I do not admit, no one forced you to believe anything. You looked at your wife and saw enough doubt to fill an ocean. Do not lay that at my door. I will lay at your door what belongs there, William replied. You saw an opportunity to weaken me. You took it. You manipulated the people under my roof. You paraded your false concern before our acquaintances. You suggested this trip now, under the guise of business, perhaps hoping that distance would keep me from examining the matter too closely. And if I did, Harrison said, the mask slipping fully now. What of it? This is the world we inhabit, Ashford. Men compete. Fortunes rise and fall. You were careless, sentimental, infatuated with a girl who did not understand her place. I merely hastened what would have occurred in time. William leaned in, his voice low but controlled. You did not hasten anything. You engineered it. You poisoned every well around me and then pretended to offer clean water. Harrison's eyes glinted. Be careful. Accusing a man of such things without proof can be dangerous. For you, I have enough proof to satisfy myself, William said. And soon I will have enough to satisfy others. Others? Harrison echoed. Yes, William said, the men whose capital you seek, the families whose daughters you flatter at balls, the circles where my word carries weight. They will know what you are. I may have been blind once, I will not remain so. You will ruin yourself, Harrison said sharply. Do you imagine society will thank you for airing domestic filth in public? They will see a man too weak to manage his own household, a husband so dominated by his wife that he attacks his friends for her sake. If that is how they choose to see me, William said, so be it. Harrison studied him. You would throw away alliances, investments, friendships built over years. For what? For a woman who left you. For a child you thought was not yours until yesterday. For a woman I wronged, William corrected. For a child who is mine, whether I deserve him or not. For the simple fact that the truth is the truth, no matter how inconvenient. I will not anchor my fortunes to your lies. You will regret this, Harrison said coldly. I already regret a great many things, William replied. One more will make little difference. They sat in stiff silence as the table between them cooled. At last Harrison pushed back his chair. Very well. Draw your noble sword of honor if you must. Just remember that in this world, those who bleed first are seldom the villains. He strode away, leaving his wine untouched. William remained seated, fingers drumming lightly on the table. The path ahead of him unfolded with brutal clarity. Confrontation, public and private, severed business ties, rumors redoubled as Harrison defended himself and painted William as unstable. It would be costly. It would be ugly. But for the first time in months, he knew exactly what he had to do. And he understood that to restore Charlotte's name, he would have to risk not only his fortune and alliances, but the last shreds of his own carefully guarded reputation. William did not leave Birmingham at once. The morning after his dinner with Harrison, he woke with his decision sitting in his chest like a stone and a strange kind of relief around it. He had spent months drifting, reacting. Now at least he had something clear to move toward. He summoned the local banker who had first courted him for investments. Mr. Alder, William said when the man arrived at his rooms, you mentioned a gathering of your associates this week. A dinner. Is it still planned? Yes, my lord, Alder replied. Tomorrow evening. A few factory owners, some gentlemen from London, Lord Harrison among them. We had hoped you would attend. I shall, William said, and I will require a few minutes to speak once the meal is taken, privately to the assembled men. Alder's brows rose. May I ask the nature of the address? You may, William said. I'm going to inform them that I will not be entering into any joint ventures with Harrison, and I will tell them precisely why. Alder shifted. That may prove uncomfortable. I am counting on it, William said. Alder hesitated. Forgive me, my lord, but Lord Harrison's name carries weight. To accuse him of impropriety, I will not be accusing him of a misplaced fork at table, William interrupted. He has interfered in my household, bribed my servants, and spread lies about my wife for his own gain. I will not do business with such a man. Any other gentleman present may decide for himself whether he wishes to. Alder studied him for a moment, then inclined his head. Very well. It is your reputation. Yes, William said, and it is about time I spent it on something that matters. That afternoon he visited Thomas again. Mr. Thomas, he said as he entered the shop, I must ask one more favor of you. Thomas straightened from a crate of goods. "Anything I can do, my lord. I may need you to speak," William said. "Not only to me this time, to a room of gentlemen, to explain how your words were twisted, and by whom." Thomas paled. "My lord, I am only a tradesman, standing in a room like that with lords and bankers." "You will not be alone," William said, "and you will not be on trial. Harrison will. You have been wronged as much as my wife. Men of business ought to hear how easily their own names might be used if they cross him." Thomas rubbed the back of his neck. If Lady Ashford would not be harmed by it, I will come." "Lady Ashford will be helped by it," William said. "If I did not believe that, I would not ask." They arranged a time and place to meet before the dinner. Then William went to the small house where Charlotte lived. Aunt Margaret received him in the narrow parlour, spine straight, expression guarded. "You may sit," she said. "For a little while. Charlotte is resting. The doctor insists she must save her strength for more important labours than listening to men explain themselves." "I understand," William replied. "I will not tire her. She tires herself more than any of us," Aunt Margaret muttered. Thinking women in her condition should think less and nap more. But try telling her that. There was a soft step on the stairs. Charlotte appeared in the doorway, one hand on the banister, the other again at the small of her back. She wore a simple dress, nothing like the gowns she had worn in London, and yet she carried herself with the same innate grace. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were clear. "Good afternoon," she said. "Good afternoon," he answered, rising. "Sit," Aunt Margaret said briskly. "If you loom over her, I shall be forced to prod you with my cane, and we will all be uncomfortable." William sat. Charlotte lowered herself carefully into the opposite chair. "How are you?" he asked. She gave a small shrug. "Heavy, hungry, irritable. You?" "Much the same," he said. "Minus the hunger." "You are not eating?" Aunt Margaret asked sharply. "That will not do. Men are useless enough when they are well fed. Starved, they are a danger to society." "I assure you, madam, I am quite capable of feeding myself," William said, almost smiling. "Then see that you do," she replied. "I have no intention of nursing a second invalid." Charlotte's mouth curved. "Aunt has adopted a policy of equal scolding." "She is very efficient," William said. "She is very fond of me," Charlotte corrected. "That makes all the difference." "It does," William agreed quietly. Aunt Margaret glanced between them, then rose. "I shall see about tea. Do not excite her, either of you." When she had gone, Charlotte folded her hands in her lap. "You said yesterday that you intended to uncover the truth. Have you begun?" "Yes," he answered. "I spoke with Mr. Thomas again. I spoke with my steward. I traced the money paid to the servants. It leads back to a company under Harrison's control." "And?" she asked. "And Harrison admitted, in his way, that he had meddled and did not consider it wrong," William said. "He believes everyone would have done the same if given the opportunity." "That sounds like him," she replied. "I have asked for time to speak at a dinner tomorrow evening," he continued. "A gathering of men who rely on Harrison's word. I will tell them what he has done. I will have Thomas there, to speak if he is able. I will have my steward ready with his records. I cannot force anyone to act on it, but I can refuse to keep his secrets." Charlotte watched him closely. "Do you expect applause?" "No," he said. "I expect awkward silence, perhaps disbelief. Perhaps a few will look at me as if I am airing laundry best left unmentioned." "And you will do it anyway," she said. "Yes," he replied. She leaned back slightly. "Why?" "Because it is the right thing to do," he answered. "Because I let him stand between us once. I will not let him stand between you and your good name now." She was silent for a beat. "Do you think my name can ever be restored?" "To some, yes," he said. "To others, no. There will always be those who prefer a scandal to a correction, but they will have to speak against my word, not in the empty space I left when I remained silent." She studied his face. "I do not know yet if I can forgive you," she said. "But I admit, it is a relief not to have you hiding behind the excuse of discretion." "I have hidden behind many things," he said. "Discretion, pride, male honor. They all crumble when one realizes the cost." "And what has it cost you?" she asked, genuinely curious. "More than I can easily measure," he replied. "My peace, my sense of myself. Most of all, you." She looked away. You have not lost me entirely. I am sitting in front of you after all. I have simply removed myself from a position in which your doubt could crush me. I'm grateful," he said quietly, "that you are still willing to sit in the same room." Tea arrived then, rattling on a tray in Aunt Margaret's capable hands. She poured, scolded William for taking too little sugar, and made certain Charlotte had the best of the biscuits. When he left, an hour later, he did so with a peculiar mix of dread and hope lodged in his chest. The next evening, the private dining room at Alder's establishment hummed with polite conversation. Men in waistcoats and carefully knotted cravats sat around a long table, plates cleared, wine poured. Harrison took his place near the head of the table, looking entirely at ease. He nodded in William's direction, eyes watchful. Alder rose. "Gentlemen, before we proceed to discuss the particulars of the Birmingham ventures, Lord Ashford has requested a few minutes to speak. I trust you will indulge him." All eyes turned to William. He stood. "I will keep this brief. Some months ago, many of you heard tales of trouble in my household. Some of you repeated them. Some of you offered condolences. I said little, trusting that silence would do less harm than explanation. I have since learned that my silence served only one man. And it was not me." A murmur ran down the table. "I was informed," William continued, "that my wife had formed an attachment to a tradesman, that she visited his shop improperly, that she betrayed me. These reports did not arise naturally, they were cultivated. Servants were offered money to speak of her. A shopkeeper was pressed to answer questions. His neutral statements were twisted into insinuations. These scraps were then delivered to me with grave concern by a man I believed to be my friend." Harrison's voice cut across the room. "Ashford, this is hardly—" "You will have your turn," William said, without raising his voice, "if any here wish to hear it." Alder's gaze flicked between them. "Please allow Lord Ashford to finish." William resumed. "I am not proud of my part in this. Instead of standing by my wife, I allowed another man's hints and the gossip of clubs to weigh more heavily than her own word. I confronted her. I said things I cannot unsay. She left my house under the impression that I believed the worst of her. I share this not to seek sympathy, but to make clear that my error does not excuse the conduct that led to it." He nodded toward the door. "Mr. Thomas." Thomas entered, hat in hand, shoulders stiff. His eyes darted to the men around the table. "This is Mr. Thomas," William said, "the merchant whose name has been coupled with my wife so carelessly. Thomas, tell them what you told me. How many times did my wife visit your shop? For what purpose? And who came asking questions afterward?" Thomas took a breath. "Her ladyship came 3 times, my lords, always with a maid. She ordered blankets and wool and simple things for my sister's charity school. She spoke of prices, of the children's needs, never anything improper. Afterward, a gentleman came. He asked how often she visited, whether she lingered, whether she seemed eager. He offered payment for my answers. I refused the money, but answered plain, that she spoke no more to me than to any shopkeeper. I did not know he would twist my words. It was only later I learned his name." "Whose name?" one of the men asked. Thomas swallowed. "He said he spoke for the Earl of Harrison." All heads turned. Harrison gave a short laugh. "For heaven's sake, Ashford, you cannot seriously—" "Mr. Thomas," William said without looking at Harrison, "you may wait outside. You have done enough." Thomas bowed and retreated. William nodded to his steward, who stepped forward with a small bundle of papers. "These," William said, taking them, "are records of payments made to servants in my household, unusual sums beyond their wages. The money came from an entity controlled by Lord Harrison. Shortly thereafter, gossip began to circulate about my wife. The same gossip he generously brought to my attention, urging me to take no action publicly and to distance myself from her privately." Alder cleared his throat. "Lord Harrison, do you refute these records?" Harrison's jaw tightened. "I do not account personally for every movement of my funds. If a man employed by me thought to oil the wheels of information, that is hardly remarkable. We all know that knowledge is the most valuable commodity in our sphere." "To use against another man's wife?" one of the older gentlemen asked. "That is a commodity I do not handle." Harrison spread his hands. "Gentlemen, let us not pretend we are innocents. We inquire. We observe. We act. Ashford acts now out of wounded sentiment. He was not compelled to believe anything I told him. If he chose suspicion over trust, That is his folly." "It was," William said calmly. "I will carry that blame as long as I live. But your part in it remains. You took my hospitality, sat at my table, and then hired my servants to spy on my wife. You listened at private doors and called it prudence. You would destroy a profitable partnership over this," Harrison said. "Over a woman who ran from you without so much as a proper farewell." "She left because I made my house unlivable for her," William replied. "And yes, I would rather lose business than build wealth beside a man who grinds his friends' names into dust for advantage." The room was very quiet. One of the factory owners cleared his throat. "Lord Harrison, your ventures have always seemed solid, but if you treat your allies in such a way, I must reconsider our arrangements." Another added, "I prefer partners whose word does not come at the expense of their wives." Alder looked between them. "We need not decide everything tonight, but it seems clear that there are concerns." Harrison's gaze found William's. "You will regret this," he said again under his breath. "I regret only that it took me so long," William answered. He sat down. The conversation that followed was strained, but business eventually crept back in. Men did not abandon profit overnight. Yet William could see in the set of their mouths, in the new caution in their eyes when they glanced at Harrison, that a shift had begun. Later, as he stepped out into the cool air, Alder joined him. "You have made an enemy," Alder said. "I had one already," William replied. "I simply chose to stop pretending otherwise." Alder nodded slowly. "Your wife is fortunate." William looked at him surprised. "She might disagree." "She may," Alder said, "but any man who stands in a room like that and calls himself a fool in front of his peers for the sake of his wife's honor, that is not nothing." William absorbed that silently. The next afternoon he returned to the small house. Aunt Margaret opened the door with a look that was almost expectant. "Well?" she demanded before he could speak. "Did you do what you promised?" "I did," he said. Harrison did not like it. "I imagine not," she replied. "Come in. She has been pacing more than is good for her, waiting to hear." Charlotte was in the parlor, standing near the window. She turned as he entered. "You went," she said. "I suppose that is obvious, or you would not be here with all your limbs intact." "I went," he confirmed. "I spoke. Thomas spoke. My steward presented the records. Harrison attempted to dismiss it all. Some believed him, some did not, but they all heard it." "And you," she said. "What did you say of yourself?" "That I behaved like a fool," he replied. "That I failed you. That I let others' opinions matter more than your truth." Her lips pressed together. "That must have been difficult." "Humiliation rarely comes easily," he said, "but it was necessary." "Did you speak my name?" she asked. "Or did you speak only of my wife?" "I spoke your name," he said, "more than once. I told them that Lady Charlotte Ashford had done nothing to merit the talk that stained her, that any man repeating it now would be doubling a wrong that has already cost enough." She sat down carefully. "I never expected you to do that." "I did not expect myself to, if I am honest," he said, taking the other chair. "The man I was 6 months ago would have thought it unthinkable. He would have muttered about privacy and dignity and borne the whispers for years instead of raising his voice. He would have preferred a quiet life with a tarnished truth." "And the man you are now?" she asked. He looked at his hands for a moment, then at her. "He has seen what that quiet life looks like. Empty rooms, letters folded and unfolded until the ink wears thin, knowing that the last words he spoke to the woman he loved were words of doubt. There is no dignity in that." Her breath caught slightly at his use of loved. "You say that word now," she said. "Where was it before?" "Locked behind my teeth," he said. "I thought you knew. I thought actions were enough. But what good are actions if they are choked by pride and never named? I loved you when we married. I love you now. The difference is that now I am willing to let that love overturn things I once thought immovable." She held his gaze. "You cannot expect me to simply hear that and fall back into your arms." "I do not dare expect it," he said. "I hope for it, but I'm prepared to wait as long as you need." "Wait for what exactly?" she asked almost sharply. "What is it you want from me, William? Be plain." "Plainly, then," he said, "I want my wife back. Not as she was, afraid to trouble me, eager to please, holding back her thoughts for fear of offending my sense of order. I want you as you are now, angrier perhaps, stronger, clearer about what you will and will not accept. I want you in my house, yes, but more than that, I want you in my life. I want to be there when our child is born, and when he takes his first steps and when he asks difficult questions, we must answer together." She blinked rapidly. "You speak as if that is all so simple." "It is not simple," he said. "It may never be simple again, but it is true." "And if I say no?" she asked. "Then I will accept it," he said, though the words cost him. "I will not drag you back by law or pressure. I will ensure you are provided for. I will visit only when you allow. I will send for our child as often as you permit. I will live with the knowledge that I earned your refusal." Silence settled between them again. Aunt Margaret, in the doorway, watched with narrowed eyes, but did not interrupt. "I do not want to raise this child alone," Charlotte said at last, voice low. "I am not ashamed of that. I am tired already, and he is not yet here. The idea of nights and days and years without help frightens me, but the idea of returning to a version of my life in which I bite my tongue and walk on eggshells to spare your pride frightens me more." "I do not ask you to bite your tongue," he said. "I ask you to use it, loudly if necessary. If I begin to slip back into old habits, I expect you to drag me out of them, preferably with fewer letters of departure." Her mouth quirked despite herself. "You think you can change so quickly?" "No," he said. "I think I have begun. I think the rest will take time. I would like you to be there to see whether I succeed, but if you choose not to, I will still continue. Because the man I was cannot be allowed near you or our child. Not again." She looked down at her hands, then at the curve of her belly. "He has been very active today," she murmured, "as if he knows something is unsettled." "He?" William asked softly. "The doctor refuses to say," she replied. "I have decided to call him he, simply to avoid speaking of it all the time." "May I?" he asked, gesturing. She nodded, and he moved to kneel beside her chair, placing his hand gently where she guided him. A moment later, a firm little kick met his palm, his face lit with wonder and something like awe. "Stubborn already," he said, "like his mother." "Or his father," she replied. He looked up at her from where he knelt. "If you allow it, I would like to court you again, properly this time. As if we were not already married. Walks, conversations, no expectation beyond what you freely offer. We can do it here in Birmingham if you prefer, or in London later. But I will not assume the rights of a husband until you give them, not after what I have done. You would live apart from me and court me while I am enormous and exhausted and scarcely able to see my feet?" she asked, one brow lifting. "If that is what you require," he said, "I will bring you flowers and listen to your complaints about the size of your shoes and be grateful for every minute." She laughed, a small surprised sound that startled them both. "You are ridiculous," she said. "Perhaps," he answered. "But I am sincere." She considered him, her fingers idly threading through his hair at his temple, as if remembering the feel of him in quieter times. He did not move, hardly dared breathe. "You may begin your courtship," she said slowly, "on a trial basis. I make no promises beyond that." Relief washed through him so sharply, he closed his eyes for a second. "That is more than I deserve," he said. "It is what I can give," she replied. "For now." He lowered his head and pressed a light, reverent kiss to the back of her hand, a gesture more like a vow than any words he could have spoken. Aunt Margaret sniffed in the doorway. "If you two are quite finished rearranging the world, Charlotte needs her rest. Lord Ashford, if your courtship is to begin, it had better include an understanding of visiting hours." "Of course," William said, rising. "I will do whatever the lady and her aunt command." "See that you do," Aunt Margaret said. As he left, he glanced back once more. Charlotte sat with her hand on her belly, watching him go, her expression no longer closed, but not entirely open either. Something in between, a door, neither locked nor fully ajar. It was enough for now. The weeks that followed did not feel like any courtship William had ever imagined, but he held on to every moment as if it were a gift he might lose. He came in the mornings when Aunt Margaret allowed, always at the same time, never earlier, never later. He brought small things that were more thoughtful than grand. Once it was a bag of perfectly ripe apples. "You mentioned you craved them," he said, laying them on the table. I bullied a grocer into parting with his best. You bullied him? Charlotte asked, amused. How terrifying for him. I use numbers, he replied, and the weight of the Ashford name. So you bored him into submission, she said. Something like that, he agreed. Another day he brought a little wooden rattle carved in the shape of a bird. I have never courted a woman while she was visibly carrying my heir, he said. I am improvising. You are doing tolerably well, she said, turning the toy in her hands. You may continue improvising. They walked when the weather allowed, his arm steady under her hand as they moved slowly along the quieter streets. He did not hurry her. If she needed to stop and catch her breath, he stopped too. If the baby kicked, and she doubled over laughing and wincing at the same time, he rested his hand on her back and waited. They talked, not just of what had been, but of what might be. Do you truly intend to cut all business ties with Harrison? She asked one day as they walked along a row of narrow houses. I have already refused the largest of them, he said. It will hurt in the short term, but I would rather deal with honest men who make less money than clever men who profit by rot. And if he begins to whisper about you, she asked. About this? He already has, William said. But there is a difference now. Before, he whispered into my ear, and I nodded. Now he whispers about me, and I can look myself in the mirror. I prefer the latter. You speak as if you have made peace with being the subject of gossip, she said. I have made peace with one thing, he replied. I cannot control what they say. I can only decide whether their words will dictate my actions. They will not. She considered that. That sounds healthy, she said slowly. Do not spread that about, he said. It might ruin my reputation as a proud idiot. She laughed, then winced, pressing a hand to her side. Are you all right? He asked immediately. He does not like when I laugh too hard, she said. He pushes against my ribs as if he wishes to be part of the joke. Already impatient, William murmured. He comes by it honestly. In the evenings, when William had gone and the house grew quiet, Aunt Margaret would knit by the fire while Charlotte sat with her feet propped up. You are softening, Aunt Margaret observed one night. I am not pudding, Charlotte answered. I am simply less rigid. Aunt Margaret said. You look at the door differently when he leaves. I am less angry, Charlotte said. That is all. Anger is useful, Aunt Margaret said, but it is a poor long-term tenant. It eats the food and never pays rent. What do you feel now, truly? Charlotte hesitated. I remember why I loved him, she said quietly. And I see that he is trying. Not for show. Not to impress others. For us. For the baby. For himself. It frightens me how much I still want what we once had. Not what you once had, Aunt Margaret corrected. Something better. Yes, Charlotte said, almost in a whisper. That. The weeks passed. Charlotte grew heavier, slower. The doctor came more often, nodding and pronouncing that all was as it should be. Soon, he said one afternoon, snapping his bag shut. In the next fortnight, I would guess. Perhaps less. Keep her comfortable. Keep her calm. Calm, Aunt Margaret muttered after he left. The man has clearly never met a woman on the eve of childbirth. The first pains came at dawn on a day that had begun like any other. Charlotte woke with a tightness across her middle that made her catch her breath. She lay still, counting, telling herself it was another false alarm. Then it came again. Stronger, like fingers closing from the inside. Aunt, she called. Aunt Margaret was at her side in moments. What is it? I think, Charlotte swallowed. I think he has decided he has had enough of my innards. Aunt Margaret's face changed from sleepy to alert. Now? Now, Charlotte said. They had prepared. The clean linens, the boiled water, the basin, the plan. It all came into motion as if everyone in the house had been waiting for this exact sequence of words. Send for the doctor, Aunt Margaret told the maid, and for Lord Ashford. Both at once? The maid asked, startled. Yes, Aunt Margaret said. The doctor for her body, the husband for her heart. Go. The maid flew down the stairs. Charlotte gripped the bedpost as another wave crashed through her. She gasped. It is too strong already, she said. I am not ready. No one is ever ready, Aunt Margaret said. Not really. Breathe, child. In, out, curse if you must. It helps. I am a marchioness, Charlotte protested weakly. Not today, Aunt Margaret said. Today you are a woman bringing life into the world. Titles do not help with that. The doctor arrived swiftly, coat askew, hair slightly disordered. William arrived moments after, breathless, hair damp from haste, waistcoat only half-buttoned. He burst into the house. "Where is she?" "Upstairs," Aunt Margaret said, stepping into his path. "You will not go into the room." "I must—" "You must not," she said firmly. "You will only be in the way. The doctor and I will manage. You will wait outside the door like every terrified husband before you." "Terrified?" he repeated, voice already shaking. "Yes, that seems accurate." "You may hold her hand between pains," Aunt Margaret allowed. "But if you faint, I will not spare you the mockery." "I will not faint," he said, though his face had gone pale. He went upstairs, heart pounding harder with every step. He heard her before he saw her. A low sound, half groan, half exhale. The doctor stood at the foot of the bed, sleeves rolled, hands steady. "How far?" William asked him under his breath. "It has truly begun," the doctor said. "These things do not run by clocks, my lord. It may be hours, it may be less. She is strong. That is in her favor." "May I speak to her?" William asked. "If she wants you," the doctor said. "Ask." Charlotte lay propped against pillows, hair damp at her temples, eyes bright with strain. When she saw him in the doorway, she almost laughed. "You look worse than I feel," she said. "That is impossible," he replied, moving to her side. "You are doing all the work." "How generous of you to notice," she murmured. He took her hand carefully. It felt small and hot in his. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. "I will go if you would rather not have me see you like this." She squeezed his fingers hard as another contraction gripped her. "You will stay," she ground out. "If I must suffer, you will at least watch." "Yes," he said, wincing in sympathy. "I will watch. I will be here. I will not go anywhere." The hours blurred. William lost all sense of time. There were only cycles, Charlotte's hand crushing his, her breath quickening, then slowing between pains. Aunt Margaret's calm voice, the doctor's patient instructions, the creak of the floorboards under the maid's feet, the faint ticking of a clock somewhere beyond the door. "Breathe, Charlotte," William murmured each time as she tensed. "With me. In, out. You are not alone. You are not alone." "I know I am not alone," she snapped at him once, then cried out. "That is the problem. You did this to me." "Yes," he said, choking on a laugh. "I did. I am deeply sorry. I will apologize again later when you are not trying to kill me with your eyes." "You will owe me more than apologies," she panted. "I already do," he whispered. She clung to his voice as fiercely as she clung to his hand. "Tell me something," she said between pains. "Anything. Distract me." He searched wildly for a story. "Do you remember the first time we danced?" he asked. "In your mother's ballroom," she said, eyes closing as a small wave passed. "I stepped on your foot and apologized for an hour," he said. "I pretended not to feel it. I could not feel anything except the fact that you were there." "You were very stiff," she said. "I was terrified," he admitted. "Not of the dance, of you." "Of me?" she gasped, half laughing, half groaning. "You married me." "Yes," he said. "That was the most frightening thing I had ever done. Until today." Another wave hit her. She bent forward with a cry, gripping his arm. "Almost there," the doctor said, calm and certain. "Courage, Lady Ashford. One more good push, then another. The child is eager. He wants to meet you." "Of course he does," she said through clenched teeth. "He has no idea what awaits him." She bore down, face contorted with effort. William could do nothing but hold her and murmur words that felt inadequate. "You are doing it," he whispered. "You are incredible. I do not deserve any of this, I know that. But I am here, I am with you. Come on, my love, bring him to us." She gave a last primal cry that seemed to shake the walls, and then, suddenly, there was a different sound, a sharp, indignant wail, thin and fierce, filling the room. Everything stopped. The air changed. The doctor's hands moved with quick, efficient care. The baby, small and slick and furious at his abrupt eviction, was wrapped in a clean cloth. His cry rose higher, as if offended. "It is a boy," the doctor announced, satisfaction in his voice. "A healthy, strong boy." Charlotte fell back against the pillows, chest heaving, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. Relief, exhaustion, something deeper. "A boy," she whispered. "William, I hear him," William said, his own eyes stinging. "I hear him." The doctor leaned over, placing the tiny bundle in Charlotte's arms. The crying eased as the baby pressed against her, his mouth rooting instinctively. Her hand shook as she adjusted him, cradling his head. "Oh," she breathed. "Look at him." William could not move. "He will not break," Aunt Margaret said gruffly from near the doorway. "Come here, you foolish man." He stepped closer, hardly daring to breathe. The baby's face was scrunched, his nose a little flattened, his hair damp and dark. One tiny hand wriggled free of the blanket, fingers splayed as if reaching. "Hello," William said, his voice rough. "I am your father. If I ever fail you the way I failed your mother, you have my permission to kick me as hard as you just kicked her." The baby answered with a small grunt. Charlotte laughed, then winced. "Do not make me laugh. Everything hurts." "Then I will save my poor attempts at humor for later," he said gently. "You have done. I have no word for what you have done." "I have done what women do," she murmured. "What your mother did for you. What my mother did for me." "You have done what I could never do," he corrected, "and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it." The doctor and Aunt Margaret exchanged a look and began tactfully bustling, tidying, giving them the illusion of privacy while still hovering. "Have you thought of a name?" William asked softly, eyes never leaving the baby. "I had several," Charlotte said. "Some in anger, some in hope. None seem to fit quite yet." He smiled. "We cannot call our son in anger or in hope. Society would never understand." "Society understands very little," she replied. He thought for a moment. "What about James?" he suggested. "For my grandfather. He was stern but fair. Or Henry, after your father." She considered. "Henry James Ashford," she said slowly. "It sounds as if he might have a chance at being both kind and sensible." "Henry James Ashford," William repeated. "Welcome to the world, my son." He bent and pressed a kiss to Henry's tiny forehead, then to Charlotte's damp hair. "Thank you," he whispered. "For him, for surviving, for not sending me away." "You are not forgiven yet," she said, but her eyes were softer than the words. "I know," he said, "but you allowed me to be here. That is more than I once dared hope." Over the next days, the little house rearranged itself around the new life inside it. The baby's cries marked the hours as surely as any clock. Charlotte moved slowly, every step deliberate, body learning what it meant to no longer carry Henry inside, but in her arms. Aunt Margaret fluttered and fussed, pretending to complain while clearly delighted. William came as often as he was allowed. Sometimes he found Charlotte asleep, Henry tucked against her. He would stand in the doorway and watch them, a strange ache in his chest. Once he came to find Charlotte awake, eyes tired but bright, Henry dozing in his cradle. "How are you?" he asked. "Like a house that has endured a storm," she said. "Some windows broken, some furniture rearranged. But the roof is intact." "And the tenants?" he asked, glancing at Henry. "Loud," she said. "Demanding, utterly unreasonable. And yet I find myself strangely fond of him." "Me too," he said. He moved to the cradle, looking down. Henry slept with his mouth slightly open, fists clenched near his cheeks. "My God," William murmured. "He looks like you when you're trying not to say something sharp." "Then he will have a long life of biting his tongue," she replied. "I hope not," William said. "I hope he speaks his mind. I hope he never learns the habit of silence that did me such harm." She watched him lift the baby carefully, hands surprisingly sure now. "You are getting good at that," she observed. "I have been practicing with my pride," he said. "It is much harder to handle." She smiled. "It is shrinking. That helps." He cradled Henry against his shoulder, rocking gently. "Charlotte," he said after a moment, "we should speak of what comes next." "You mean beyond the next feeding?" she asked. "Beyond Birmingham," he replied. "Beyond this house, beyond these walls that have been your refuge and my schoolroom." "My schoolroom?" she repeated. "I have learned more here than in a lifetime of tutors," he said. "About myself. About you. About what matters." She drew a breath. "What do you see when you think of the future?" "I see Ashford Hall," he said, "but not as it was. Not a museum of my father's rules. A home, yours as much as mine, Henry's. I see you walking through its halls without fear of listening ears. I see a nursery filled with your choices, not my mother's fading wallpaper. I see a house where no one will ever again earn coin by betraying their mistress. You paint a pretty picture, she said. How do you propose to change the minds of those who still believe I ran from you in disgrace? Some minds will never change, he said, but I can stand beside you in church, in town, at table, and make it plain by my behavior that I consider you my honored marchioness, not a tolerated burden. People notice such things. They gossip when a man neglects his wife. They also gossip when he carries her shawl and leaves early from parties because she is tired. You intend to carry my shawl? She asked, amused. I intend to carry whatever you ask me to, he said, even your temper when necessary. She looked at Henry, then at him. And if I choose not to return, then Birmingham becomes our centre, he said simply. I will sell a portion of the London holdings, invest here, find a house with enough room for a child to run without knocking over the furniture. Ashford Hall can stand empty, or be let to someone who will not fill it with ghosts. My title does not vanish if I move my address. You would leave your ancestral home, she said slowly. Yes, he replied. Brick and stone are less important than blood and breath. I know that now. She studied his face for a long moment. You would not resent me for it later? Blame me when age makes you nostalgic? If I resent anyone, he said, it will be myself for not making our life easier sooner. Silence lingered between them, not hostile now, but heavy with possibility. I loved Ashford Hall, she said quietly. Before everything. Do you remember the first time you brought me there after our wedding? I wandered the gallery and thought, I live here. I belong here. I remember, he said. You whispered to the portraits as if they might answer. I asked them if they would accept me, she admitted. And what did they say? He asked gently. They were portraits, she said. They said nothing. That was the worst part. He winced. And I did not realize you needed the living man beside you to answer instead. You were busy being dignified, she said, and I was busy trying not to disturb your dignity. We were both busy in all the wrong ways, he murmured. She looked down at Henry again. I would like him to know Ashford Hall, she said at last, to run in that gallery, to see those portraits and know where he comes from. But I would also like him to see Birmingham, to know that the world is larger than one estate. He can have both, William said, if you will come home not as the girl who left, as the woman who returned on her own terms. She looked up. His eyes held hers, steady, open. I will not go back to who I was, she said. I would not want you to, he replied. Who you are now terrifies me in new and interesting ways. She laughed softly. You are far too honest these days. I am making up for years of not being honest enough, he said. She let out a slow breath. Very well. We will return to Ashford Hall. When the doctor says I may travel, when Henry is stronger, we will go together on one condition. Name it, he said. We do not slip into the old pattern, she said. If you begin to brood in your study and shut me out, I will remove every chair from that room and force you to conduct your angst standing up at least. That seems fair, he said. And, she added, we will renew our vows. Not for society, for ourselves. A simple ceremony. No ball, no spectacle. Just words. Spoken clearly, with no misunderstandings between them. I would like that, he said softly. Very much. Aunt Margaret appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. You are plotting, she said. I can always tell. Your faces go soft and foolish. We are planning, Charlotte corrected. Planning is just plotting with better posture, Aunt Margaret said. What have you decided? To return to Ashford Hall, William said. In time, Aunt Margaret pursed her lips. I suppose someone must go up there and teach those stone lions at the gate a lesson. They have looked smug for decades. We will visit often, Charlotte said, taking her aunt's hand. If you will come. I am too old to be trailing after you across the country, Aunt Margaret said briskly. Fortunately, that will not stop me. The months that followed moved more swiftly than the slow days of waiting that had come before. When Henry was strong enough and Charlotte's strength had returned, they made the journey south. The carriage that rolled up the drive of Ashford Hall carried not the frightened bride of a year earlier, but a woman who had left once and chosen to return. The stone lions were still there, of course. William leaned out of the carriage window and tilted his head at them. Behave, he told them quietly, or she will have you replaced. Do not tempt me, Charlotte said under her breath, but there was a smile tugging at her mouth. The staff assembled on the steps, some familiar faces, some new. Hargreaves stood at the front, hands folded, expression carefully neutral. "Welcome home, my lord," he said. "My lady." Charlotte stiffened for a moment at the title, then relaxed as William took her hand and helped her down, Henry cradled against his chest. "Thank you, Hargreaves," William said. "I trust the house has behaved itself." "As well as any house can without its mistress," Hargreaves replied. "We are glad to see it corrected." Charlotte blinked, surprised. "Dinner will be informal tonight," William said. "No guests, no ceremony. We are here to rest, not to perform." "Yes, my lord," Hargreaves said. The first days were strange. Familiar rooms felt both like home and like a stage set for a life they had left behind. But slowly, Charlotte began to rearrange things. Curtains were opened wider. Heavy furniture was shifted to make space for Henry's small cradle in the parlor. William moved his desk from the large, echoing study to a smaller room near the morning room, where conversation carried easily. They held the vow renewal 2 weeks after their return. The church was the same small parish where they had married the first time, but the pews were nearly empty now. Only Aunt Margaret, a few trusted friends, the doctor from Birmingham who happened to be visiting a relative nearby, and a couple of William's allies attended. Henry slept through most of it, a soft bundle in Aunt Margaret's arms. The vicar kept it simple. "You have been through much," he said quietly as they stood before the altar. "You are not children now, whatever your ages. Speak plainly. It is a holy thing." This time, when William took Charlotte's hands, there was no tremor of shyness, only a deep, steady weight. "I, William," he said, voice clear, "take you, Charlotte, again, and with full knowledge of what I risk and what I gain. I promise to listen before I judge, to stand beside you when others speak against you, to be your partner, not your warden. I broke your trust once. I will spend my life rebuilding it, brick by brick, with truth and with patience. If I fail, I ask that you tell me, not with silence or departure, but with the same courage you have shown me in returning." Her throat moved as she swallowed. "I, Charlotte," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, "take you, William, again, knowing exactly how stubborn you are. I promise to speak when I am afraid, not to hide in the corners of my own house, to ask questions before I assume the worst, to be your partner, not your ornament. You doubted me once, and it broke my heart. I do not promise to forget, but I promise to remember also the man who changed, who chose me and our son over comfort and pride. If I falter, I ask that you remind me of this moment, not with reproach, but with kindness." "You may kiss the bride," the vicar said, smiling. William lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her fingers first, a small gesture of reverence, then leaned in and kissed her gently, fully, in front of the few who watched and the many who would never see. It was not the kiss of strangers at a first ceremony. It was the kiss of two people who had walked through fire and found each other on the other side. Life at Ashford Hall slowly settled into a new rhythm. Rumours did not vanish overnight, but they changed shape. People began to speak of how devoted Ashford had become, how he insisted on dancing at least one dance with his wife at every gathering, how he cut off a story about another man's scandal with a single cool look, how he left early from dinners because "Lady Ashford is tired and I prefer her comfort to your port." Some scoffed, some admired, some were secretly envious. Henry grew, noisy and curious. He toddled through the corridors as soon as he could stand, leaving a trail of chaos. William chased him more than one dignified visitor had ever seen a Marquess run. "Come back here, you menace," William would call, laughing as Henry toddled away, chubby legs pumping. Charlotte would watch from the doorway, arms folded, heart full. One afternoon, when the late sun slanted through the long gallery, she walked with Henry on one side and William on the other. The portraits stared down as they always had. "Do you remember what you asked them the first time?" William said quietly. "I asked if they would accept me," she replied. "And now?" he asked. She looked at her son, who was pointing a sticky finger at some long-dead ancestor. "I do not ask their permission anymore," she said. "This is our house, our family. They had their time. This is ours." He smiled. "I like this answer far better." They stopped before a large window that looked out over the grounds. Henry pressed his hands to the glass, fascinated by the moving shapes of trees. "Do you regret anything?" she asked suddenly. He was quiet for a moment. "I regret every day you were gone, every night you cried without me there, every moment I let someone else's voice drown out yours. But as for where we are now, I cannot regret the path that brought us here, because it taught me what I needed to know to keep you." "You did not keep me," she said gently. "I chose to stay." "Yes," he said, "and that is what humbles me most." She slipped her hand into his. "Do you know what I regret?" she asked. "I am afraid to ask," he replied. "I regret that I believed even for a moment that I was better off lying to you than risking the truth," she said. "I should have given you the chance to prove me wrong sooner. I should have asked for more, demanded it. Perhaps we might have avoided some of the pain. Perhaps," he said, "or perhaps we needed to break to be reshaped. I do not know. I am no philosopher. I only know that I do not take a single moment for granted now." Henry turned from the window and reached up toward both of them, his small hands grasping. "Mama," he said, still half-formed. "Papa," he added with equal seriousness. William's face lit. "He has chosen his words wisely," Charlotte laughed. "He is diplomatic already. He will have to be, with us for parents." They each took one of his hands, standing there in the light, a small triangle of warmth against the long shadows of the hall. Charlotte looked up at William, her eyes shining but no longer haunted. "We nearly let them destroy us," she said softly. "Rumors, pride, fear, all whispering at once. We almost listened." "We did listen," he corrected. "But we learned to stop. That is the difference." She nodded. "If ever we forget, we have him to remind us." Henry babbled something incomprehensible, then tugged at their hands, eager to move again. "Where are you taking us, Henry James Ashford?" William asked. "Forward," Charlotte answered for him. "He only knows how to go forward." William squeezed her hand. "Then forward we go," he said. "Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.